Hi, my name is Helen Mitchell, for those of you who don't know, and myself and my husband Colin serve in ministry on Mount Carmel in northern Israel, together with our 2 adopted children, and originally from the UK, as you can probably hear from my accent. Now, in these last 7 months, as our country has been going through this brutal war, I have been really struck by a sense of urgency about how we as a worldwide body of believers can get ourselves emotionally prepared for days of trauma and stress. So I've got this plan, which I'm hoping will come off and I'll manage to carry it through, to do a little series of messages called the Trauma Survival Guide. And so this is the Trauma Survival Guide Part 1, because over these last few months, and in fact, actually over the last few years, our family has been through different sorts of challenges and difficulties that have taught me a great many lessons, culminating in the crazy stress of these recent months. And I think there's an awful lot that we can do to make ourselves resilient and to get emotionally healthy and to be strong for days ahead that could be turbulent and could be stressful. So I want in this video just to do a little introduction to the topic. And the title that I've given for this video, that sounds a bit funny, but I'm going to explain it, is called Learning How to Thrash. So I want to start off by talking about a quote from an American psychiatrist who's no longer alive, called Karl Menninger. And I think I'll put the quote maybe in the comment section of this video, or maybe at the very end of the video, because it's quite wordy and it takes a little while to unpick it. So if I put it up on screen now, everyone's going to be trying to work out what it all means. So I'll put the quote in a different place, but for now, I'm just going to just explain to you what Karl Menninger says in this little illustration that he gave. And he was actually referring to people with serious mental health issues. But when I read it, I think it can apply to any one of us, actually. And I think it's very relevant for any one of us trying to survive stress and trauma. So Karl Menninger, he gave an image of a fish in the ocean. And he speaks about a fish that gets caught by a hook. So it takes a bite of the bait and then finds himself with a hook in his mouth. And none of the other fish in the ocean know that this fish has a hook in his mouth. So they're looking on at this fish as he starts thrashing and flailing around and gyrating in the water. They think, what is up with that fish? What is going on with him? And they don't know, they don't understand, so they just think it's his fault. And so obviously the point Karl Menninger is making is that when we go through periods of deep stress, and I mean he was making the link to actually sometimes expressions of mental illness, that people can easily look in and think, wow, there's something wrong with that fish over there. But they don't understand the environment, they don't understand the circumstances, why that fish needs to thrash. And Karl Menninger goes on and makes a really powerful point. He says every fisherman knows that those wild thrashings may well pay off. They may well get free of the hook, that fish might. And so I suppose for me, as I have watched myself going through different responses to stress over these months, I've thought a lot about that thrashing fish, and I've thought, and there have been times I've had to make a decision. Do I thrash around to make sure my needs are met, or do I blend in and not make a fuss and not cause people to look at me and think I've lost my mind And there are times I've had to actually make the decision to thrash, even though it's felt uncomfortable. And the thing is, it's when we thrash that we actually stand a chance of getting free. And as I've kind of thought about this fish over the last few months, it kind of makes me think that our culture and our society is very deeply, all of us have it very deeply ingrained in us that we don't want to make a fuss. However difficult things are, however stressful things are, we don't want other people knowing. We feel very ashamed about airing our dirty laundry in public. I'm sure I'm not the only one who once or twice has fallen over or injured myself in some way in a public place and have stood straight up and brushed myself off and said, oh, it's fine, no problem, however much pain I'm in, just because we learn not to make a fuss. And when I look back on myself maybe a few years ago, before I had learned some of the things I know now, and I think about that fish and the hook, and I think, if I'm honest, and maybe I think probably a lot of us, if we were honest, if we found ourselves in the ocean with a hook in our mouth, we would probably rather get pulled up by that hook, fried in a pan and served on a dinner plate, than we would thrash and flail around in the water with everyone else thinking that we had totally lost our minds. So the motivation I have for wanting to do a little trauma survival guide really is teaching us what it means to thrash if we found ourselves with a hook. It means how do we survive trauma? How can we be resilient? How can we take our needs seriously and not just pretend that everything is okay until we totally break? Because pretending everything is okay, it works when you're dealing with little problems, but when you're talking about traumatic stress or very serious problems, then it's a recipe for disaster. We need to be able to reach out to other people. We need to be able to be real about our needs. We need to be gracious with ourselves when we need time, when we need space, when we need to cry, when some of our behaviours may seem a little bit extreme, when we need to step back from roles and responsibilities, when we need to, sometimes even when we need to drop the ball, and when we need to let other people down in order to stay well and stay safe emotionally ourselves. These are all lessons that I think are very important for us to learn as we head into times that could be more stressful. So I'm going to end this message now, but I encourage you to think about that fish. And in the next message, I'm going to come back with some more practical ways of what it means, how do we get free from the hook, and what that looks like, and how to live lives that are resilient to stress and trauma. Okay, I'll say goodbye for now.